Hey, welcome to the show. It's the third show. And if I sound bad, it's because my mic's broke. So fuck it. Who cares? Y'all are getting a show anyway. Uh, this week, I have somebody, I did his show, and
Yeah.
it was very fun. And I got John Cullen from Blocked Party. What's up, John?
Hey, Brian. I'm just chilling, getting ready. We're actually speaking of Blocked Party. We're going to record an episode of that after this. So this is my warm up.
That's miserable. You should have told me, man. I did that last Thursday. I did God damn it, I can't remember. I did a wrestling podcast and then I did my own podcast and then I did a wrestling podcast right after, and it's like 5 hours of fucking recording because the wrestling one was 2 hours.
Oh shit.
I didn't expect. Mine was only an hour though. So
Right. So that's good. Yeah. If you, as long as one of them's chill, like I know sometimes Stefan will do Blocked Party like after they do their stream. So he like does his stream. And so that's like a double whammy because he has to like be funny and also look at Jesse for like 2+ hours. And then he's got to come and try and do our show. And I feel terrible for him. So you're getting me first. So like Blocked Party tonight will probably suck shit, but Fight, I'm here for you, man.
That fucking stream, I don't know how those guys fucking do it, man. I did.
Dude, it's wild. I have no clue. I couldn't do it. They're doing it 6 days a week now.
Yeah, I did YKS last night, and when I was done, I sort of realized like they're gonna, I think, do another thing after this. I'm going to fucking bed and watching wrestling.
Yeah, totally. Like, I don't know. I know. And Stefan's like, he's always like, it's because he has a job now too. Like for a while, he was just doing the stream and Blocked Party. So it was like pretty chill. Like even if he did have the stream, it was like he just did nothing all day and then did the two thing. Now he's got a job. So like some days he's like going from his job to the stream to the pod. And so I don't know how he's doing it, but he's making it happen. I think it's just it's his little body. I think it's very resilient.
It is easier to do this stuff when like you like it. I always think back to like before podcasts, guys like us would be doing, well, you do stand up anyway, but guys like us would maybe be doing stand up, or like if we were lucky and it all worked out right and we knew the right people, we'd be in radio.
Right.
And it would be 10 times, it would suck. Like this is so much easier than that.
Oh, for sure. You don't have to leave your house. You don't have to. I mean, that just start there. I mean, right away. That's awesome. At least for me, like the Block Party studios in our house. I don't know what your Street Fight setup is, but I don't have to leave the house when we record. So it's like it's found money for me. I love it. It's great. The studio's here. The boys come here. It's like, yeah, it's like an hour a week. And then sometimes we have to do bonus episodes. I mean, you guys are crazy. You guys do so many bonus episodes. It's wild. I don't know how you do it. But like you said, it's enjoyable. It's fun to do.
Yeah, and people know this now that listen to the bonus, because this is a bonus episode. Like I record them all at once. It's like 3 weeks of every day doing podcasts, and then 2 months of not doing it. Only doing 2. So I do. I mean, the Cullen show takes so much. I used to record these shows relatively time sensitive, and I still will if something comes up and I want to talk about it on the bonus feed, because Street Fight has a very particular kind of beat, I guess. So it's like we have to just, if there's something I want to talk about on this side, I will do it. But like, or if something, say we have a guest on and then something happens with that guest the next week and it's like, oh, well, we'll get this up. But other than that, I'm very the Cullen show takes a lot. Like I don't know how so I'm doing another bonus. I'm doing like a mini series thing on here for our Patreon for the $5 level, where I'm doing a podcast about shock jocks.
Oh yeah, I've seen you like tweet about this all the time.
Yeah,
I was like wondering, like, okay, so you're doing a mini series, have like a podcast mini series about this?
Yeah, I'm gonna do.
Oh hell yeah.
I'm going to do one about Opie and Anthony, one about Howard Stern, one about Mancow, Bubba the Love Sponge, and Tom Likas.
Man, and then that's wild shit.
Yeah, then one overarching one that sort of talks about how, to me, the main, like, germ of the idea was me and Felix wanting to talk about Opie and Anthony.
Right.
And people wanted to hear me and Felix talk about Opie and Anthony. And then,
of course, yeah.
And then it was like, you start thinking about it, and those guys influenced me.
Right.
And they influenced him. And then our shows influenced a decent amount of people too. So it was like, it is kind of cool to draw kind of a straight line.
Right. I think in some ways too, you could argue that a lot of that stuff is sort of the precursor for podcasting in a lot of ways, right? Like, I mean, yes, it was on radio, but they were kind of the sort of vanguard of like, yeah, we just get on the show, we talk about whatever the fuck we want. We have guests on all the time that, make the show go. And I think there's a ton of parallels there. So I think it would be interesting for sure to like look at how those guys influenced you. And like you say, now that they're influencing you, and also it's a good excuse to listen to the most insane shit for like a couple weeks.
Right. That's the thing. I mean, that happened 2 years ago. We're going to talk about this so much, we might as well just get into it.
Yeah.
When the bonus shows kicked off, probably the third, it took us a long time to launch bonus shows because I am weird. And I started this podcast at a time where I was getting my first peek into punk rock. You know what I mean? Like, because I grew up, I didn't listen to punk. I thought it sucked.
Oh, really? What did you listen to like growing up?
Like Korn and new.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah.
Rap when I was younger. I listened to like NWA and Bone Thugs and Harmony and shit when I was way younger.
Okay,
gotcha. So like, I didn't know about the punk ethos. I actually knew about it, but thought it was stupid and corny and dumb.
Okay, yeah.
I just wanted to be a rock star.
Sure.
So when I learned about punk, we launched this show. I had started listening to Against Me.
Okay.
And a few other things, and I was like, I will never charge for my art.
Right. So it was like a DIY thing for you. You were like, oh, this is so cool. You watched the like Fugazi documentary and you're like, yep, $5 a show forever and no one has to pay for anything. This is the way to do it.
Yeah. And then it's like we're doing it for 5 years and no path to monetization. No. Well, you're like building this thing and like for what? Because it can't last. If I have to go to a 40-hour a week job, this can't happen.
No, for sure. Yeah, exactly.
So it's like, what do you build? Like it came to a point where it was like, what are we even building to? If we got 1 million listeners and we're not charging them anything or they're not paying for it, then we're not going to be able to do this anymore. It doesn't matter how many listeners come to
sure. Well, I know, like, people have like their own opinion about Bono or whatever, but I remember like watching an interview with him, and this going like way back, like 15 years ago, but he had a quote that like really resonated with me because it was actually after, I think it was like right around when like How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb came out. So when U2 had kind of like, they were on their sort of like early aughts, like comeback kind of thing. And the VJ had asked Bono about like selling out and, people accusing U2 of selling out or whatever. And he's like, anybody who makes art and tells you that they're not in it to make money is either lying to you or they're stupid.
Yeah.
And I was like, that is such a good, like, yeah, I think you come up in a culture, not even punk wise. Like, and maybe this is a Canadian thing too, but I feel like there is this sense of like, you almost feel guilty about charging people for something, especially if you've done it for free for so long or for like a small amount of money. It's like the idea of like, oh, I'm going to make so much more money, or like try to make more money. Like you've almost feel embarrassed for some reason. And
right.
I don't know, like I was talking about this last night. I did a show. We have a competition in Canada here called Canada's Next Top Comic. And the lady who books the Just for Laughs Festival is one of the judges for it. So she was out here and I've been friends with her for a while and we were chatting and she was talking about how American comedians are like so much more aggressive about like selling merch and stuff like that after shows. And she was like, and I see that too. Like when American comedians come to Canada, it's almost like the comedy show is just an excuse to sell the merch. And they're like very aggressive about it. And like Canadians, and she said this, she's like, it's one thing I wish I could tell more Canadian comedians is like, it's okay to sell stuff and to like be aggressive about selling it. But I think, yeah, it's just this like idea you get in your head of like, oh, what I'm making can't be worth this, right?
Yeah, I mean, because I had struggled I'd been doing this since 2011, and it just started picking up steam, and probably I think it was 2015 when Chapo launched, and then we started doing stuff with them, and it started to pick up steam, and I was like even afraid to call myself a comedian.
Right.
But once we started charging, it was sort of like once we started charging, and the third show, this thing that me and you were doing, is $1 because
Right.
I was like, you can have this for a fucking $1. That's why we have a zine to get the other $5. We're trying to we want people to we want people to be able to hear everything.
Yeah.
Like the goal is that everybody can hear everything. And I like sort of even agonized over this show because it was like, okay, so this show is not allowed to be street fight. Like this show isn't even, I don't consider, this is a different thing. It doesn't have to be political, and it doesn't tie to the other show.
Right. Yeah. It's a thing that, and especially when you have that separation, right? Of like, this is the third show, this is $1. Like people get that too, I think, right?
Yeah. And I think that helped me a little. And then like, the zine started making money, and then we started touring, right? Doing little small shows within 6 hours of our house. And there was this one time where we were like, we should start doing one of our shows from a bar instead of doing it, because we were just recording the same show twice every week. There was a show in the basement and then another show in the basement, and that was it.
Right, yeah.
So like, they're just 2 1-hour shows. There was no way to distinguish them before the call-in show. So we were trying to figure out how to distinguish the 2 shows that we did on the main feed per week. And we tried to do it live once, and like it was free to get in. And like maybe 10 people showed up to this thing.
Right.
And it was just like, if you don't charge for it, people think it's fucking worthless, is like what the real truth is.
Yeah, totally. Totally. It is. It's like, it's the same thing with comedy. And it's funny, you were saying how you were like reluctant to call yourself a comedian. I wish more people who call themselves comedians were like you. So you're setting a great bar there, because there are so many people in Vancouver, at least, that do like 3 shows and then they think they're the mayor of comedy, which is pretty awesome. But yeah, it's this like, I agree with you. Like I went through the same thing of not like when you start to perform live and start to figure it out. Like it's the same thing with comedy. Like a lot of people say you have to charge something to get in, because people want to feel, even if like it's a trick that you can do where you can charge people $5 a ticket, but you get a free beer with your ticket. So it's like basically your ticket is free, or it's like, $2 or whatever after you factor in the cost of the beer. But it's just the act of paying for something makes people pay more attention to the show. Like trying to put on a free comedy show is death, because they don't have an investment in the show. They're like, well, I didn't pay for this. So now that there could be 5 comedians that all do great. And then as soon as there's one comedian that does bad, people will just check out. And they're just like, well, I don't give a shit now. Oh, there's one person I don't like, so now I'm not invested in this. And it's like, it's just this weird thing where it does legitimize your art to your audience, even though you feel like inside, like maybe, like you say, you're a bit of a hypocrite or something like that, or a bit of an imposter, when that's kind of what the audience wants. They go, oh shit, this is like something worth paying for. And I think we try to do that with our Patreon, like I totally think, $5 a month is like a big investment for a lot of people. And I totally appreciate that people are willing to do that and pay $60 a year or whatever for our show. But at the same time, I feel proud of like the bonus episodes we do. And I feel like we're giving them something that's worth that, So it's like that balance of like, and I think knowing that people are paying for it makes you want to make it good too, right?
Right, yeah. And it makes you want to make the free shit good too, because you're like, oh, I'm not just like, this is the free stuff. This is because like the way because I think of the free show, I don't think of the free show as a way to sell this. Like, I
Right.
don't think of the free show as a way to sell the third show. I think of the free show as the way to make people invest in us as
Yeah.
people. They invest in me and Brett as people, and they want to see what we do, and they'll come out to see us live, since live performance has become such a big part of this thing now. And
Yeah.
like all of that stuff, the zine, all of that stuff fed into each other, and that's where that I mean that's how we got rolling. That's how it worked for us. And like, if I had tried, like, stand up was like, that world is hard, you know.
Yeah.
Like, it's mean. A lot of stand up comedians are like just mean, like,
For sure.
not particularly funny, just their whole thing is that they're mean.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like even off stage too. Like there are like people in every scene that's just like their whole thing. Like that's like their gimmick almost. They're just like, yeah, I'm a dick. Like that's just me, you know. And comedy's hard because a lot of people that do professional comedy do it from like a young age, and they go kind of like right from high school into comedy. And I don't think, you know, going to university doesn't matter, but I do find that kind of propagates this sort of like gossip and infighting and that kind of thing. Like I feel like that's something that if you went to university or you had like a period of your life where you worked a real job or whatever, you know, you kind of get rid of that stuff. You know, you realize like being an adult is not that, you know, whereas
Right.
like some stand-ups have like legitimately never had like a 9 to 5 job, and they never worked in an office, and they never had coworkers, and they just think it's fine to like treat everybody like you would treat people in high school. And that to me has always been the hardest part of stand-up for me, is that, you know, I still have a regular job, I'm still a teacher, and so I like exist in this comedy scene, but I'm so different from so many of the people that are in it. And I'm not trying to put people down. Like there's obviously tons and tons of amazing people in the stand-up world that I've met. Not everybody's like that, but there are definitely people where you go like, you know, if you just like didn't do this for like 2 years and you just like had a real job where you had like a real place to be every day and you had to be nice to your boss and like all this stuff, like I feel like it would make it so much different for a lot of people.
There's also a thankful, like, it's also a thing if you've worked a real job and then you start, like, for me, I make my whole living doing street fight. And
Yeah, which is incredible.
Yeah, and I'm incredibly thankful that, like, this is my job. It's fucking crazy to me that this turned into my thing, and I want to be nice to as many people as I can. I want to bring as many people up. Like, I want more people making their living doing this. You know,
yeah, for sure.
I want to make a world where like if you're good enough, I want to make a world where if you're good enough and you have maybe some semi like the podcast that I do, like guest on, the people that I have on this show are people who I feel like aren't trying to knock anybody down or keep people underneath them. They're like always they're building up and like they want to work with other people. Like I had Mike Hale on here.
Yeah.
And then they had me on YKS, and then people don't know this yet, but I'm just going to say it. He's going to be on stage with us in Nashville.
Oh, hell yeah.
When we do our show in Nashville, along with a few other podcasts, actually. It's going to be like a huge fucking thing, you know?
Sweet, man.
And I want a guy like Mike to get on stage and be like, oh my God, I love being on stage.
Yeah.
I want to be on stage again, and I want them to do their thing on stage. And I'll come and help. You know, I always tell comedians, every time I talk to every stand-up that I know that I like, and you're gonna get the same thing. It's like, come to Columbus, and I'll fucking, if you think it would help you in Columbus or Cleveland, I'll fucking do 5 minutes before you go on stage.
Right, yeah, man.
Because I want like people to show up, and I want people to see all these people, because there's enough room for a scene. You know, there was a scene, there was alternative comedy changed fucking everything in the 90s. And I think that this like podcast group, this group of people, they're on Twitter, they do these podcasts, we all kind of work among each other. Like we're just so low self-esteem that we don't think we can fucking change everything. But I mean, in the back of my mind, I'm like, I think we could really do something, you know?
Well, I think the thing is, that's cool to me, and is that I think podcasting almost, like, I agree with you. Like, I feel like podcasting is such a welcoming space as opposed to comedy. I think there's something about stand-up that just feels inherently competitive, and I don't know why. I guess it's because, it's all live, so it's all the same people you see all the time. You're doing all the same shows. You're kind of doing the same things, are trying to get the same things. You're trying to get the same festivals. You're trying to get the same TV spots, all that stuff. So even if you're really good friends with people and you're a really good person, there's always going to be this kind of competitive element. And also, like, a lot of the biggest things in stand-up are competitions, like Last Comic Standing. Yeah. And then, like, we have Canada's Next Top Comic. And, like, you can't be a professional comedian without going through, like, being in competitions. And podcasts just seem to exist in, like, this other world. It's like they almost exist in space or something, where it's like, it's almost impossible to feel competitive, because it's like, what are you competing for, really? Like, like there's, I mean, I guess you're competing for, like, Patreon dollars, but in my experience, like you said, it's like this whole group of podcasts, like, like you guys and Chapo and YKS and Episode 1 and Cumtown and us and, just, I'm probably leaving some out, but just that whole kind of, I think Felix called it the podcast resistance or whatever, and throw in, like, the video game streams too, like Go Off Kings and Chapo FYM and all that stuff. Like, it just feels like it's all about, like, bigging up each other, and it's all about, like, guesting on each other's shows to, like, drive people to those shows. And, like, definitely, like, the episode you did with us is one of our most downloaded ever, because people follow you where you go. And it's the same thing, like, when Jesse's on our show, or Chris James, or people that are in this space, Patty Moe, that's another podcast, like What a Time to Be Alive. Like, when those people come on the show, it's like we get this cool symbiosis of, like, all these people that like alternative comedy that are kind of following the people they like around and discovering new things. And it's never for 1 second felt competitive to me.
Yeah. And you look at, like, when I did stand up for 6 months.
Okay.
Which isn't enough time.
Well, it's not enough time to get good, but it's enough time to know that you hate it.
I hate it. Yeah, and it's weird because, like, I found that I didn't get a lot of joy out of getting a good 5 minutes.
Okay, yeah.
If that makes sense. Like, I didn't get I worked for 6 months on this 5-minute chunk of fucking material, because I was just doing open mics because nobody was asking me to be on their shows.
Sure, yeah.
And I worked on this fucking thing. And then I got it done, and then I was completely tired of telling it. Like, I hated doing it. And then I found myself just going on stage and kind of bullshitting with the audience and not really doing my stuff and not really doing well. And with open mics, you're performing in front of mostly comics, so it's not even, like, it doesn't feel like, it felt like I was spinning my wheels. So yeah. We decided to do this thing. And, like, here's another thing about podcasting is, like, we're all working with somebody else, Yeah. Like, we're in these, like, the people call Brett, Brett is like my other wife.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
All of our finances are tied together. Our career is tied together. It's our business and we have to run it,
Yeah, so, totally.
But it's like, it's a guys, like, a kind of a choice, and I like it, and I like working with another person. Even when we were doing stand up, because we both did it, but we did it separately. So
okay.
I would go up and then he would go up, and, like, I was writing jokes for him and he was writing jokes for me. It was just like, who would be better at this joke? So right. It felt good when we finally were like, you know what, fucking, we can both do it. We can just go up together and just do this thing. Yeah. And, it's just the not wanting to call yourself a comedian thing is really, for me, I feel like we skipped a bunch of steps, and I think there's guilt about that, in my opinion. And I also think that there is a antagonism with some stand-ups that are
Sure,
like,
yeah.
these guys are skipping steps. It's like not fair because I'm leaving on Saturday, and I'm gonna perform in front of 200 people on Sunday, and Tuesday and Wednesday. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, for sure.
I'm able to do this, and it's a lot. I think it's more fun for me than stand up, and it's scarier than stand up. Not scarier in that like I have friendly crowds, but we also encourage them to yell shit out during the show.
Right. Yeah, so you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, we know nobody's going to yell a slur or anything.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's when street fight ends, when someone just stands up in the crowd and starts yelling slurs.
What they get probably beat up. I don't
Yeah,
know.
probably.
Like, 199 other people in there. And like that even took us forever to cultivate. Yeah, you'd have no idea how hard it is to get crowds conditioned to being good and quiet during a comedy show, to be loud and obnoxious during a comedy show.
Oh, totally. Yeah, no, that is a skill for sure. I think it's, I mean, to go back to your point about calling yourself a comedian, I mean, I think it's, with all that stuff, it's jealousy, right? I mean, I go through it because I have a real job. Like, I mean, as far as like Canada is concerned, I've checked a lot of the boxes. I've performed at all the major festivals. I'm a touring headliner. I make a pretty good amount of money off of comedy every year. I have a successful podcast. But people will still say like, oh, Cullen, yeah, he's not a real comedian because he's got a day job, and it's like, it's just because like this whole skipping steps thing. I mean, it's like, what does that even mean? Like, yeah, I can respect that you feel you've worked harder, and maybe you have, but like, all those things happen for a reason, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like, I mean, you guys obviously figured out, you put your finger on the pulse of what is good and best for the both of you, and also what is good for an audience. So like, begrudging anybody for finding their audience and creating comedy is like, and the reality is like stand-up is such a fucked up thing. Like a lot of people just aren't that good at it, even if they're super funny. And then there are some stand-ups, Brian, like that if you met them off stage, like you'd have no idea. They're like the least funny, least interesting person you've ever met. And then they get on stage, and it's like, holy fuck, this is the funniest person I've ever met in my life. And it's just so weird, like how it can go both ways like that. So, I mean, I think anybody that's making a living in comedy, and then especially like with what you guys have done, I mean, if anyone is saying, oh, they skip steps or they're not real comedians, like that's just professional jealousy is all that is, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm going through this shock jock thing, right? And I'm listening to recent episodes of like Bubba the Love Sponge, where these radio guys are furious about podcasts.
Of course.
What I mean? And they're just like, oh, we had to go through the corporate radio thing, and we had to do this, and we had to rise up through the ranks and get our ratings the right way. And it's like, maybe you all suck because you went through the same fucking process and you came out all the fucking same. You know?
Oh, totally. And that's the thing too. It's like I resent the idea that that there aren't different ways to work hard. Because you get that too. Like you get that in stand up a lot. Like this, this big idea of grinding. Like that's the thing. Like that's the advice you'll hear, and I'm sure you heard it in your 6 months of doing stand up. Is, oh, you just got to get on stage as much as you can. That's all. That's the whole secret. Oh, you just got to get on stage. And to me, that's like the laziest possible advice you could get. Like, don't get me wrong. Obviously, you need to get on stage a lot if you want to be a successful comedian. But this idea that, well, I get up 4 times a night, so I deserve more than you who gets up 4 times a week. There's still something to be said for talent and all that kind of stuff. It's like, look at sports, right? Like, I mean, everybody that's playing a professional sport has put in probably around the same amount of hours into the thing. And some people are just more talented than others, and you understand that. But comedy, for some reason, people just want there to be an objective reward for their hard work. And it's just like, that's just not how it works. Like, and there are different ways of doing it. It's the same thing with podcasting, or like, like when those guys were coming up, that's what you had to do. You had to go to traditional broadcast school. You had to work your way up. You probably worked for a small town radio station that sucked ass and you fucking hated your life. And then you had to be an intern and you got shit on every minute. You had to work your way up the chain. And that was just the way you did it. And now it's like, there are other ways of doing it, and that's okay.
And that's, I mean, when you said that, like, people will say, oh, he has a day job, he's not a real comedian, that is like a comfort thing, right? Like, you have a job to support you that's not comedy, because like they want you to live in a shitty place with 3 other people and fucking all of that stuff, or you aren't a comedian. And it's like, I don't fucking want to do that, I don't want
Totally.
we get a discount on hotels because I have a relative that works for hotels. And people are always like, you can crash at my house. And I'm like, I'm a fucking 40-year-old man. I'm sleeping in a fucking hotel. Because it is like, I want this to be comfortable. I want to make enough money. I mean, we're all I think everybody's just trying to make enough money so they don't have to worry about money anymore. I always say, like, we're all looking for enough money that we don't have to check our bank account. Like,
totally. Yeah. It's a good place to get to.
Yeah.
I know it's such a weird thing, it's like that idea of like, I don't work hard because I'm not getting up as much as everybody else. It's like, well, when I do go do a show, I also worked like 7 hours that day, and I drove 1 hour each way to get to the school I'm teaching at. And then I came home, and then maybe I had to do an episode of a podcast, and then I went out and got on stage. And you maybe worked at a coffee shop for 4 hours, then smoked a bunch of weed, napped all day until 9, then went and did the show. And then you did one more set than me. So like you work harder at comedy than I do. Like, I think that's the thing that gets lost sometimes. It's like, other things can also count as work. You know what I mean? And so it's like, and it's the same thing with you guys. It's the same thing like for me with top podcasts. Like, I mean, you have to figure out the ways to monetize it. You have to figure out how to make it work with your host, and like you guys, you're doing all these bonus episodes. You've got your zine, you've got your tours. Like, I mean, just from the outside looking in, it feels to me like you guys work as hard or harder than anyone else on podcasting. So like, to be like, oh, well, those guys aren't comedians. It's like, well, fuck you. Like, okay, so you did 2 sets tonight. That makes you a comedian. But these guys who are leaving their families and going on the road and doing these shows and working so hard at their show, like, that doesn't make them a comedian. Like, it's just, that's the disconnect that really always throws me off. It's like, there are just, like I said, there's just so many different ways to be successful. And people who think there's only one way, the way that they are doing it, are stupid.
Yeah, and stage time, like, to your point too, stage time is important. And like the 6 months we did comedy, I would never say were a waste, because we do material that is very different from like established comedy. Like, I feel like me and Brett do material that kind of hadn't really been covered, or or like was dark in a different way, or was like edgy in a different way. And sometimes at the beginning of podcasts, your numbers are your numbers. Like, if 500 people are listening, they're probably not interacting with 450 of them. Probably 480 of them probably aren't interacting with you. And you don't know what you're doing. And every person who does a creative pursuit, especially a funny one, goes to bed at night and thinks, maybe I'm just not funny. Maybe this just isn't funny, and maybe it's just funny to me, and I think it's funny because it comes from my head. And I don't know if it's like this for you, but my personal friends that work real jobs, or my wife or my daughter, none of them like think I'm very funny. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's such a great point. I think that, like, I'm not sure that there's like anything, there's almost no other profession aside from maybe like acting, where imposter syndrome is just so heavily ingrained as like part of it. Like it's exactly what you say. I mean, it's not even so much that I think I'm not funny. I mean, I think that I've done enough stuff now where I can be like, and I was always funny growing up. Like that was always my thing. As a kid, I was always the class clown and stuff. So I always felt like I was funny. So I don't think it's so much that. It's just more that I feel like everybody else is funnier than me.
Yes.
So it's not even so much like I know I'm funny, but then I'll do, yeah, sometimes we'll do like an episode of Blocked Party, and I can think like right after the show ends, I'm like, wow, like Stefan had like 10 things in that show that I bet people will laugh out loud at, and I had like 0. People probably hate me. People must hate me. Like they probably love Stefan and they probably hate me because I'm not funny, and it's like, yeah, it's totally true that you say that. Like that's definitely something that always affects you, I think, is because it's so subjective. And so it's so easy, because there are absolutely right now 100% people who think we suck and think we're not funny at all.
Yeah.
And so it's so, and that's totally fair. Being funny is so subjective. So like, it's totally fair if someone is like, John Cullen, I don't think he's funny. I have to just be like, yeah, okay. So then it becomes so easy to imagine that there's thousands more of those people.
Right. And like I said, in the early parts of the dirtbag stuff, because like me and Brett kind of stumbled on that dirtbag thing.
Yeah.
And we're working real hard to like refine it and stuff. But I don't remember a lot of stuff that talked about being broke the way we did. And it was just like, maybe people just don't want to fucking hear this. So standing on a stage and then having like, the 1 or 2 non-comedians in the audience come up and be like, man, I really identify with that. I know how you feel, was like, okay, so this is something that can get over. Now it's just a matter of like, how do you get it in front of the right people? And then,
oh yeah,
we just got lucky. That's another thing that people, I mean, and when you talk about like maybe there's people that are funnier than me, like not only do I have that like on Twitter, but I'll have that with podcasts where like I will have a sort of jealousy for shows. And I don't look at numbers, and I don't look at numbers. I mean, even if I do look at numbers, I don't believe numbers.
Right, yeah.
So like I've been jealous of shows that are bringing in $600 a month on Patreon while I'm bringing in, $10,000 a month on Patreon. And I'm just like, man, those guys they're so good. They're so lucky that like they're, you know what I mean? Like,
oh, for sure.
I can't even believe in the objectivity of numbers at this point. Like,
yeah,
for sure, fucking irrational.
Well, it's so weird too, because it's like you say, you have those 1 or 2 people that say you're good, and it's so hard to blow that up in your mind. Like it's so easy. If one person says you suck, it's so easy to go, oh shit, there's probably 1,000 people who think I suck. Yes. But for some reason, it's so hard if one person is like, hey, you're good, to be like, you know what? I bet there's like 1,000 people that think I'm good. Like you're like,
I always look at them like this. Oh, I got them fooled. This is bullshit.
Yeah.
This person don't know anything. Like you really do when somebody likes you, you kind of like are like, oh, they probably just think I'm a nice person.
Yeah. Yeah, see, and I'm not. So I know for sure they don't think that.
I get that a lot because like people say that me and Brett are very nice. Right. So like I get like when somebody says they like me or they think what I do is great, I'm just like, oh, that person just thinks I'm nice. Like I talk to them. I address them,
Yeah, but I definitely think that about my stand-up sometimes, because I do I do think I'm pretty nice. I also think I present nicely, like a lot of stand-ups, and a lot of it's just part of their act, but like a lot of stand-ups present poorly, like I'm like just a regular average looking guy, and I'm so non-threatening, so I think like, I think especially now with all this conversation and like the narrative around stand-up is so dominated by PC this and, you know, oh, I'm offended by everything, blah, 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 you know. And then I just get up there and I'm like, you know, I just look like your brother. And I'm just like, hey, like I'm a substitute teacher. Like, well, it sure is like fucked up when it rains outside. Hey guys, you know, or whatever. And then they're just like, oh, like this guy, like it's pretty cool. Like what a nice guy, you know. Like I don't put anyone on blast. I try not to make anyone feel uncomfortable. And you know, I think I do think that that's part of it too. Where I'm like, oh, did they did they think I was funny, or was it just kind of like they thought, oh, that was like nice to like hang out with like my sister's best friend for a while or whatever.
But even if that's true, that makes you talented too.
Sure, yeah, and that's the thing, you know. And I think like I was saying that with Blocked Party, you know. I mean, I think Stefan is one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life, and his brain just works in a way that like my brain doesn't work. And so sometimes I'll have those thoughts of like, oh man, he's so much funnier than me. But then I realize like, you know, I'm also I'm bringing something to the table too. Yeah. It's not, you know, it's like you have to have a kind of yin and yang, and that's what makes shows successful, and that's what makes people like them. But yeah, it's a different, but it is hard when it comes to being funny, because when you do, like you say, when you do something comedy, all you can think about is like, fuck, I really didn't have any jokes I felt landed that episode. And I just don't know if I was really in the groove. And yeah, it's tough. Like, do you find, because you guys have been doing it for so long now, like, do you find that that's even something you think about on an episode to episode basis anymore, or is it just like you guys are so locked in now? Because I'm so fascinated by this, because like one of the most successful podcasts in the world, and especially in Canada, is called Stop Podcasting Yourself, and it's based in Vancouver. It's 2 Vancouver comedians who do it, and they've been doing it for like 11 years. They're almost on episode 600. They've done once a week for like 11 years. And like, I'm so fascinated by that longevity aspect of it. Like, can you speak to that?
Well, we have different roles on the show, you know, and like, it's been going this way for like a long time. And, basically, like, I can explain like how, like, so basically Brett is the host, and he's very good at talking, and he's very good at opening the show and doing all that stuff. And Brett also does impressions. He will act. He will do all of that stuff. So my job is basically be me, and then, you know, kind of bring stuff up so that we can both be funny about it. So most of the time in the end, he doesn't know the stories, so I feel like I have an advantage anyway.
Right, sure.
I'm the one that's gathering. I decide what we're going to talk about. So, I mean, there's not a jealous. I think one of the reasons I love working with him is that there's never been I need to get all the laughs.
Like,
thing. We've always written for each other. Like, we've always, like, if I need something to be acted out or I need something to be done in a funny voice, I'll write it for him, and like, he gets it done. If he thinks of anything that he thinks that I would say, he'll just give it to me. We've always just passed the stuff back and forth, and we share everything when we're doing the show. We just even on stage, I think there are times where I walk off stage and I'm not super happy with what I did, but he's happy with what he did, and I'm like, well, if he's happy, then we did okay. You know,
you can share in that. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think I'm definitely not jealous. I wouldn't say, but I guess that is a thing that people would have, being jealous in like a partnership. No, I wouldn't say it's a jealousy thing at all. I think it just more is the insecurity, right? Of the just like, oh, did I pull my weight there or whatever? Right. You know what I mean? And I think that is something that's just going to be there forever.
Yeah.
You know,
he's also like a lot less public than me, you know, and honestly, people are kind of afraid of him. Like, I think a lot of people see him as unapproachable. So that is one thing that, like, you know, I'm like the public face of this thing.
Right. You're the everyman.
And I get a lot of like DMs from people telling me how great I am and shit like that. So he a lot of times will feel like, oh God, I wasn't that great there, and I'm or something like that. But it's like, nah, man, because if Brett's not good, it's my fault. It's because of me. It's
Right.
not because of him, and that's how I always think of this stuff. Like, if I'm not setting him up to be funny, then I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do.
For sure. Yeah, it's a symbiosis for sure. And I mean, I think, Stefan and I, having done Real Good Show before, so we've done like over 200 episodes of shows together, even more, almost 250 now. I think, yeah, you definitely get to a place where you recognize that it's like a team effort,
Oh yeah. It's the wrestling thing, really. It's like those two guys go out there and they put something together, and if it sucks, it's usually not one of their fault. They're working together to make a thing, and they both have roles in that thing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I think of our thing. We both have roles in this, and if he's not getting jokes off, it's because I'm not. Because if there's two of you, if he's not getting jokes off, it's because I'm not setting up jokes for him to do, because that's kind of how it works,
Yeah.
And there's a cheaty thing too. I always say this. There's a thing with two people on stage where like I can tag his jokes, I can act surprised at his jokes, I can laugh at his jokes, and he can do the same stuff for me, and the crowd will respond with the other guy. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, for sure. And that's what really makes stand-up its own thing, because it's just you, and there's no like whatever you say or do physically is the thing. Like that's what has to make the crowd laugh. There's no interplay. There's no straight man to feed off of. There's no nothing. It's just you, And I totally agree. Like I know when we did a few live episodes with Real Good, and I've done obviously like other comedy things where there's other people on stage with me, and you just go like, yeah, okay, like there's almost like a weight off your shoulders in some ways, because you go, okay, this is nice. I've got someone else here. It's not all on me all the time.
Yeah. And you guys are almost definitely going to do a live blocked party with us.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, we're getting to that point. We're lazy. No, we're not lazy. We're going to do one. We're thinking in the fall, I think we'll probably.
Well, we're working on getting to Vancouver.
Yeah, which would be amazing. Yeah.
We would probably be contacting you guys to do a show with us.
Oh yeah, no, we would love to do that for sure. So, I mean, yeah, it's crazy. Like Come Town is coming here next month, and it's crazy to think like being a part of this sort of, like I said, this podcast realm that feels like it exists in space. It's almost like this weird thing where like because I didn't know Come Town was coming. I haven't been paying much attention online, and then there was a poster up at my home club at the Vancouver Yuck Yucks, because that's where they're playing. And so there was just like a poster up in my club that was like Come Town Live, and it was almost like I had to like double take it, because it was like, wait a minute, they're coming here? Like it's this weird, I feel like it would be the same if you guys came, or Chapo, or any, like you're just kind of like, oh wait, yeah, like they're real guys that are just gonna come here and do a thing. Like, oh cool.
That's been like a great thing. We are going on tour with District Sentinel and the Trillbillies.
Nice.
This summer, and we're also going on tour with Jake Flores and Kath Barbadero.
Oh, awesome.
This summer. So like we're trying to take more people out to do things. Those shows with Chapo were really important for us. They got us in front of audiences, which then watched us and said, hey, those guys are good. I'd like to see what they do. And then so we're trying to do these things and then bring people up with us and get them in front of our audience, so that or us in front of their audience. But, yeah, we're trying to like load these tours up, and like we're trying something new now. This summer is the beginning of us trying to add things to what a podcast tour is, because driving around the country with just Brett is not as fun as driving around the country with a bunch of other people.
Yeah, no, totally.
So
for sure, I mean, I think that I agree. Like we did that with Real Good. Like whenever we did the Real Good live, like I would do stand up at it, and it's like, yeah, you feel like, oh shit, I'm actually in front of my audience. Like, this is so nice. Like, it makes a huge difference because most of the time as a stand-up, you're just like, people are just going out for a night of comedy. They have no idea who you are. They don't care who you are. They just hope you can make them laugh.
Yes.
And so it's like you're almost fighting the crowd. Like, it's almost like they're sitting there like, fucking impress me, man. You got it. Like, whereas like when you get your audience, they're like, they're like, I can't wait to be impressed. Like, they're so excited just to see you, And so, yeah, it's like, it's something I haven't had the opportunity to do a whole lot because, entertainment in Canada is very hard to do. But when you feel like you're in front of your people, it's like, it's such a liberating feeling. And I even get that like opening for people, because like I've opened for Nate Bargatze a few times and I feel like him and I are very similar comedians. Like, obviously he's one of the best alive and he's way better than me, but I just mean like I'm a storytelling comedian and I'm pretty clean and that kind of thing. And so I feel like even opening for him, I'm like, this is my audience. Like, it feels like a warmer, more excited because they're excited to see him, but then it also gives you credibility because in their mind they're like, well, Nate's a huge comedian, so whoever's opening for him must also be good. So they're tuned in for you and they're excited, and it's just like, yeah, it's a different vibe that is so much more exciting, And I think it's like really admirable how hard you guys are working to cultivate that audience for yourself.
Well, we want also like just even like when I was this is a weird thing, but as a kid, I used to love it when people from one TV show would be on another TV show together with the other people.
Flintstones and Jetsons? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, so like Street Fight and Chapo has turned in to a special thing that only happens once, maybe 2 or 3 times a year, in random places at times that you never know when it's going to happen, but is special every time it happens, Yeah, totally. And I want to do that. Street Fight with District Sentinel has always been good and always been fun. And it's just like, I want to do that with everybody. I want to smash these things all up together. It's all talented people that are funny. You can't fucking lose when you do that.
Oh, totally. And especially like, like we've said a few times, but it just is that it's the idea that we're all kind of working out of that same ethos, right? It's like I feel like so many of us, we came from the same place. We feel the same way on a lot of things. And most importantly, our sense of humor is very aligned, And so it feels like when you get that type of crossover, it's such a slam dunk because it's like, you don't even have to work with those people necessarily, right? Like, I mean, that's the beauty. Like we have you on Blocked Party. I've never spoken to you in my life. And we just like bring you on the phone from across the country. And it's like hilarious. And it feels like I've known you forever because it feels like we're just coming from the same place and we're just uniting,
Mm-hmm. So, when I was on your show,
yes,
we weren't allowed to talk about a certain thing.
Yeah.
And I let these shows go. Usually in 75 minutes is what I like to, is about where I like to go. And we have a little bit of time left and we have to do something here.
Yeah, let's do it.
John likes new metal too.
Yeah. I like that you said that like it was like a new metal anonymous meet. Like, hi, I'm John. I like new metal too.
When did you? So we're way. I think. How old are you?
I am 33. I'll be 34 this year.
So this is interesting, right? Brett is 35 years old too.
Yeah.
Like you guys are right around the same age. I'm 40.
Yeah.
So
you're a little older.
So yeah, we both experienced it in totally different ways, but at different formative times of our life. And I think that's so fucking interesting. When did you like get into it and who did you start with?
So Korn for sure. Korn was the big one. Korn and Limp Bizkit both. So it was funny. So the first, because I always had like fairly, I would say, good taste in music for a kid. Like when I was in like grade 4 and 5, like I was really into like Weezer and Green Day and Blink-182 and bands like that. bands I still like, so that's why I consider it to be good taste. And then I had bad taste. Well, because then I started liking Korn. But no, I think it was just I remember my first memory of Korn is someone wore a Korn shirt to class, and I was like, I think I was in grade 6, and I remember being like, "What is Korn?" And he's like, "Oh, it's a band." And I remember thinking like, that is the dumbest fucking band name I've ever. You listen to a band called Korn, and it's spelled with a K, like what? And and he was like, "Yeah, like they're really cool, like whatever." And I was kind of like, okay. And then it just never really hit me. And then I just dismissed it. I only knew who they were because of my friend Craig, who listened to them. And then and then it was probably grade 8 for me. So this would be 1998. I was 13. And Freak on a Leash came out. And I think it was just like, that was, a lot of people don't remember this, but like Korn was like the biggest band in the world, basically, which is so crazy. Like, like I get it. Like people look back and they're like, oh yeah, like Korn, like what a joke or whatever. And I find like it's people who are like, I feel like I was just the end of it. Like, being 13 at that time was like the limit. Like, because I have a buddy who's like 3 years younger than me. We have very similar musical taste. And he thinks nu metal is like a joke. Like, he's like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, you listen to that? Like, are you joking? But like, yeah, if you were 10 when Freak on a Leash hit, like, of course you wouldn't like it, probably. But yeah, I was like 13 and you just can't understand. Like, I mean, we had Much Music up here, not MTV, but like people don't remember, like, Freak on a Leash got retired, Got the Life got retired on Total Request Live because it got requested too many times. That it was the first video to ever get retired. Was a Korn video. Like they made up the concept of retiring a video for Korn, which people don't seem to get. So like I would watch Much Music all the time. This Korn video came on. It had a cartoon. And it was just different than anything I'd ever heard before. And I was like, this is pretty fucking cool. So then I started getting into more like Follow the Leader tracks. And I'm like, okay, I like this. Like Got the Life is cool. Freak on a Leash is cool. This is good shit. And then that was the year of the Family Values tour, which was Korn, Limp Bizkit, and Incubus was also on that version of it. And then obviously like Rammstein and Ice Cube and Orgy. But those were like the three, like Limp Bizkit, Korn, Incubus, where I was just like, holy shit, this Limp Bizkit band is pretty fucking cool. And then they had a cover of Faith. So I was like, oh, a cool cover, like, hell yeah, And then that was just like the springboard for me. And then it was like all Korn and Limp Bizkit all the time from then on.
So I got into Korn in 1995. I was 16 and I was working at McDonald's.
Yes.
And I got my first paycheck and I went to the Media Play, which was a big box, like CD and book and shit store. And my brother was like, hey, my older brother had just seen Danzig, Marilyn Manson, and Korn.
Oh, wow.
Like somebody talked him into going. He was a Danzig guy. And he was like, okay, I'll go. And Korn opened. And he was like, dude, you have to hear Korn. And Korn to me, because I saw the cover of the first album with the girl on the swing set.
Yeah.
It looked fucking scary. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Korn was
a scary word. Yeah.
Well, Jonathan Davis is a creepy motherfucker. Like, yeah, I was scared as hell of Korn. Are you kidding me? I was like, grew up in like suburban Toronto. Like, oh yeah, Korn was. That's why Limp Bizkit was so interesting because like Limp Bizkit was like the non-threatening nu metal band, which is weird given like what ended up happening at Woodstock and all that stuff. But like at that time, it was like, oh, they had like a playful cover of George Michael. Fred Durst was like a regular looking dude who wore a baseball cap, whatever. Jonathan Davis is like, yeah, I bought John Wayne Gacy's car and I have like a John Waters reverse Hitler mustache and I wear kilts on stage. And like even just the imagery around Korn was so scary. Like you say, the girl on the swing set, but even like when you watch, like I remember getting, did you have their DVD Deuce?
No, I had Who Then Now.
Yeah, okay. So Who Then Now came out first, and then Deuce came out after, and it had Who Then Now on it.
Okay.
And then Deuce was the follow-up. And the the DVD, and then it had like all these obviously like DVD extras, like music videos and shit like that. And the DVD menu was like an abandoned morgue slash torture chamber. And like the things that you would click on to like access the music video were like body parts suspended from the ceiling. There was like one room, like, so you would go in different rooms on the interactive menu. And then like there was one room where the sink was just full of body parts. And then like different body parts in the sink you would click on. And those would be, so I was scared of like the DVD menu. Like I remember getting it home, and I'm like 13. I had a pretty sheltered life growing up. I remember putting it on and being like, oh shit, like my parents can't see this. and me myself being grossed out. Like I was like, oh, and then you'd like click on the body part, and then all these maggots would like fill up the screen, and then like Freak on a Leash would start or something. And you're like, what is this?
Well, you know what's funny is, so I bought that album and listened to it for 2.5 years. That was when somebody asked me what kind of music I listened to at that age, it was Korn. That was it. I saw them live 8 times in that 2 years. I saw them at like really small clubs, and one of the bands that opened for them in that time was Limp Bizkit.
Right.
And Fred Durst stood outside after one of the shows and handed out a 3-song cassette tape to people as they walked out of the fucking concert. And I got that thing and listened to that a fucking zillion times. And I remember standing in the audience when the first time I saw Limp Bizkit, and they were fucking playing, they were opening, and then there was a band called Delinquent Habits, and then Korn played, like a rap group. Limp Bizkit opened for Delinquent Habits, then Korn.
Yeah.
And like I listened to that thing over and over again, and I fucking loved that stuff. And I just remember going to the record store, and he had a Korn poster behind his head, like at the Cool Metal record store. He had a Korn poster, and the first time I saw them, I was like, I wish I was those guys. Like I thought they looked like the coolest guys in the fucking world. And like I still even think, like, whenever I meet a guy in a band or something, or like when we interview people in bands or go to live shows, I still think those guys, like any guys that are in a band, are the coolest fucking people.
I think like Korn, I mean, I've heard people make the case that they were like the last big rock band.
I think they were.
And I think that that's true. And I think like in a lot of ways, like they looked like that. Like, you know, it's such a weird, like, and they all had like a different look. So you could be like, oh, that's the guy I think is the coolest, or that's the guy, you know, like Jonathan Davis was like skinny and wore tracksuits, and then like Monkey just seemed like a cool kind of like surfer dude, and then Head always had like really weird outfits on, and then Fieldy was like a sports guy if you were like into sports, and then David was like the gym freak. It's like if you were like into roids or whatever. Like it was just such a weird, like they all looked so different, but they all like looked like rock stars in their own stupid weird way. And it's like, yeah, I don't know what it was that was so appealing. I think it was like, for me, it was, you know, I grew up in a time, and I don't know if you were like this too, but you know, for some reason that music spoke to me. Like, did I have a difficult childhood? No. Like, I mean, you know, I felt pretty depressed at times, and I was a bit of a loner in school and stuff. So maybe I felt like a bit of a kinship with the music that way. But for some reason, as a 13 and 14-year-old kid, I felt like, yeah, man, like Jonathan Davis gets me, man.
I have like my theory on what spoke to me about, because my parents, they weren't bad like Jonathan Davis's parents. You know,
right. Yeah.
Like my parents were just more, they ignored me.
Right. Okay.
You know, and they both worked, and there were 5 of us, and I was in the middle, and like I was just out running the neighborhood all day, and just sort of, I feel alienated from them at 40 years old. I feel alienated from my parents. I don't think they get me. I don't fucking get them, and that's it. And I've said this on the show before. I was like kind of a popular kid in high school. Like I've always been pretty good in social situations. I'm good at talking to people. I used being funny to make people like me and shit. And I don't know what I think what grabbed me though. The main thing that grabbed me was I hated the fact that adults had authority over me, that teachers and
Right.
parents they were allowed to fuck me over. It's kind of like how like I get so mad at the police. And the reason I get mad at the police is because they ultimately have like power over me, and it makes
Right.
me fucking angry that they have power over me. And I think new metal was adults, people in their fucking 20s. I think Jonathan Davis was 27
Yeah.
when that first Korn album hit, and it was just like these guys fucking understand, man. They hate their parents.
Yeah, totally. And that's the other thing that's like so weird about it, like when you look, like I remember, because I still listen to it, like not ironically, like
Me
and not all the time. Like I can't. It's not like I'm driving to work every day listening to Korn and Limp Bizkit, but like sometimes there's like nothing better to listen to in the world. It's like a sunny day, windows down, and you just get some fucking Limp Bizkit cranking, and it feels amazing. But yeah, it's like this weird thing where I can actually remember getting older, like getting into my like mid 20s and listening to Korn and being like, how could this guy write these lyrics seriously, like at that age?
Yeah.
Like it was so weird to think about like a 27, then you get into Follow the Leader, like a 31-year-old man being like, fuck you, mom. I fucking hate you. You suck. Like it's just so like it's so hard not to think it's disingenuous, but like I don't think it is. Like it's this weird thing where you're like, no, I think he is still really fucked up about all this stuff.
He's mad. He's mad at his fucking because I am still mad at mine.
Right.
And like even noticed at times on Street Fight, at times where I'll like take jabs at my fucking dad. Right. He's not even listening. He doesn't care a shit about this. But I feel like I just feel this need to like Brett does an impression of my dad, and we call him a wiener probably every 2 or 3 weeks. And it's like I get it. The weird one to me though, always Blink 182 was the one where I couldn't figure out how they were writing those songs.
Oh yeah.
Their age.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Yeah. It's Christmas, it's Labor Day, and my grandpa just ate 7 fucking hot dogs. Yeah. He shit his pants. He's always fucking shitting his pants. Yeah, it's like, okay. Yeah, I know. Yeah, it was
hard. They were harder for me to figure out.
Blink 182 is like, I mean, they're definitely one of the most confusing bands of all time. Like now, like it's one of those things with hindsight. Like if you just watched like the Damn It video, I know Travis wasn't in the band then. So like even if you watched like What's My Age Again video, you could watch that and be like, oh yeah, it makes sense. These 3 guys would be like best friends and they're all into this, and like that makes perfect sense. And then like now that you have like this benefit of hindsight where you realize like Tom DeLonge is like a legitimate insane person.
Yeah.
I think Travis Barker might be one of the dumbest people alive. And Mark Hoppus is just like a regular dad, basically. Like he just has had dad energy since he was like 18. Like it's like this very weird, like you're like, how did these guys come together? And then not only come together, but make this music about like jacking off and fucking girls and yeah, they're the weirdest band to me. Like Angels and Airwaves is the weirdest band of all time. Like I can't even understand that that's your pivot of like, yeah, like I was in this band where we talked a bunch about jacking off and we're like one of the biggest bands in the world, and like, but also like aliens for sure exist, and I'm dressing only in all black one-piece suits from now on, and I have a custom guitar and everyone in my band has to play it, and it's like it was just such a weird like what is happening right now?
Yeah, I feel so bad.
Yeah, yeah.
But
so angry.
But the thing was like the thing that I think really is weird though is that I went Korn, I liked Limp Bizkit, I liked Incubus, Deftones still Like I will never let them go.
Oh, me neither. For me, the Deftones are one of the best bands ever.
Yeah, and people love to say they're not new metal because they don't like. They're so good that people deny that they are what they are because they feel bad for liking this thing that came totally from that movement. Like in my mind, I believe that Korn, Deftones, and Limp Bizkit on tour would be a ridiculously successful tour. Like
I would follow them around like they were the Grateful Dead in the 60s.
Yeah, I mean, I just saw Korn a few years ago. 2 years ago, a listener sent me and Brett tickets to see Korn in Cleveland.
Amazing.
We fucking drove up and went to it, and it was just. I mean, I've seen them live a fucking 1,000 times, and I saw them at Woodstock '99, which is like
amazing.
I was like in that pit when Limp Bizkit was playing Break Stuff. I was like there for all that shit.
Oh man, I'm so jealous of you. I watched that on pay-per-view.
Yeah, I was down there. I mean, like I was really there to see Korn, Limp Bizkit, and ICP. Like that was my three like things that I was excited about, and they all happened in a row. So I was on like fucking overdrive by the time, and Rage Against the Machine too. I was very excited to see Rage Against the Machine.
Fuck, what a good band Rage is.
Yeah. Did you do like Coal Chamber and stuff too?
No, so I never the industrial side of it I like never got into, like Fear Factory, Coal Chamber, even the like Brazilian side of it with like Sepultura and stuff like that. Like I would say it was really like a 2-band thing for me. Like it was Korn and Limp Bizkit, and like that is honestly, and then I still liked Weezer, I still like Green Day, I still like Blink. I never stopped liking those bands. But yeah, it was like probably, so I would say in my early 20s I would say Korn and Limp Bizkit were like my favorite bands from like age like 14 to 18. And then when I was 18, I had a coworker that got me into the Deftones. So like I hadn't even got on to Deftones yet, because White Pony came out in I think 2000. Yeah. So it was like White Pony would have come out like a year before I like started really getting into Deftones. And yeah, like my buddy was just like, "Oh, you like those bands? Like you'd probably like Deftones." And to me, Deftones was then like the gateway band to getting more into like screamo and stuff. So I pivoted from like new metal into the more, because I liked the kind of shoegazy sort of aspects of Deftones. So I switched from that into the more kind of like, yeah, I went from there. And then like Dredge was like a massive band for me, because to me they were like kind of the gap between like new metal and screamo, but then I was kind of like transitioning out of screaming into more like indie, and Dredge was like in that like perfect spot where they were like heavy enough that it like satisfied my like screamo new metal side, but like kind of atmospheric and indie enough to satisfy that side. And like, so they were my favorite band then for like probably 5 years in that period. And then I just got obsessed with music and I got way more into bands, but I just wasn't that big into music. But I had Korn and Limp Bizkit and I hated my life apparently. And so I just went all about it. And I've still never seen Korn. It's like I've seen Limp Bizkit, but I've never seen Korn. It's like a big regret in my life.
It's still they're still just as good. It's still just as fucking insane when you see Korn as it was back when I was seeing them. You know, you said something a minute ago that like I've given Deftones credit too, and that like I was only listening to new metal from probably the age of I know from 15 until I got to probably like 23 or 24. And but I was very into Deftones, you know, like when Around the Fur came out, before it came out, I was like on a dial-up modem, like clicking play on a preview, a 30-second preview of Be Quiet and Drive, just to hear like what they had. I was so amped for that, for Around the Fur. Like I was a huge Deftones guy. And Deftones, after White Pony, they really did, I feel like gave me permission in a weird way to check out like Radiohead.
Yeah.
And then I got into I was open my mind to like the Mars Volta and At the Drive-In.
Yeah, totally.
And even alternative, like I was listening to like Cake and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Deftones really did. I mean, Deftones was like a really good band to get young, I guess, to get angry people into different music.
Yeah, like I bet totally. Like I bet there are so many people that drew a straight line from Deftones to Radiohead. Because like, you know, White Pony and Kid A kind of have a lot in common in like weird ways. Like they're both kind of like genre busting albums, both like very atmospheric, both sound great in headphones. Both were like a departure from like strict like guitar bands playing in one genre to like experimenting more with electronics. Like there's a ton of parallels there. And I was the same. Like loved White Pony and I got into Adrenaline and Around the Fur. And then I like when the self-titled came out, I thought that like Minerva for me, like I know people shit on that album, but like Minerva, I just like played on repeat. Like that song for me was like, oh my God, you know. And then Kid A came out like around that same time, and I remember a girl in my grade 12 class like loving Kid A, and I remember listening to it and getting into that. And then Radiohead was like the gateway for, I got way more into like softer indie, like you know, Elbow's still one of my like favorite bands. I got into them like right around that time, and that's like kind of what got me into the more like softer stuff, even though I still listen to a ton more heavier stuff. But yeah, like I'm sure Deftones were a gateway band for so many people, but I think it's kind of the same thing. Like, I mean, Limp Bizkit, I always say this, but like, I actually think Limp Bizkit holds up better than Korn. Like, I still like both, but I'm just saying, like, as an objective person, like, people shit on Limp Bizkit way more, but I actually think it holds up better than Korn because Limp Bizkit were such good musicians. And I feel like Deftones is the same. I feel like every musician in the Deftones is such a good player that that's what really made the difference, is like, and also that Chino was like obsessed with like 80s synth pop, but and like
good his voice was just,
his voice is unbelievable, and it still is. It's crazy how good his voice is still. But like, I think that's what really helped bridge the gap, and what's made those bands have way more staying power is that people forget like they're really fucking good players. And like, maybe it was you that even tweeted this, but we were talking about Rage, and like, you know, how good of a band was Rage that they made like a bunch of white teens like yell lyrics about like Tibet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I think you might have been the one that tweeted that, or I just saw it out there, but I was just like, yeah, like, I mean, they were just so fucking good at music that people were like, hell yeah, man. Like, fuck, what's going on in Tibet, man? That's crazy shit.
Well, Korn, also, I will say this. I tend to think Korn, I think they stand up a little better than you're giving them credit for, only because I feel like Limp Bizkit had like 2 good albums.
Sure, yeah.
I don't think anything after Significant Other spoke to me as a person.
There's a few good tracks on Hot Dog Flavored Water, Chocolate Starfish. I think there's only a couple though. I agree. Like, it wasn't a solid album
but I feel like the first Korn album is a fucking masterpiece. Every song on there is good. The second one is pretty good. I don't know what they have against that album. I think it's pretty good.
Yeah, they really hate it.
Follow the Leader, I still think Follow the Leader is great. It's really good. There's bad stuff on it.
Sure. Oh yeah, of course.
You know,
there's problematic stuff on it.
Right. But even if you're not counting the problematic stuff, like that Ice Cube song is just,
oh yeah, there's some really bad songs on it.
Yeah. but like then Issues is really good too.
Yeah, Issues is really good. It kind of fell off after that for me. Like, I liked Untouchables, but after that I kind of fell off. To me, I think it's almost, for me, the first Korn album, I think the songs still hold up, but the production is tough to get past.
It's weird. It's weird now because
it's a very weird production style. It sounds so tinny. The drums sound horrible. And it's just so like, it's weird in that like the drums sound tinny, but then everything else sounds muddy. And it's like, really, it's just like, I find it very jarring to listen to be honest. So I think for me, that's where the like not holding up part of it comes in, is the like, the production value is just not there.
It sounded so different then.
Totally.
Like everything was perfect sounding. And then that came out, and it was sort of like, oh, this is a different way to do things.
Oh, yeah. You'd put on headphones, and as soon as Jonathan Davis is like, "Are you ready?" You're like, "I am ready. I don't know what I'm ready for, but I am fucking ready. Let's go."
I just feel so lucky that like I got to go see those guys when that was the only album they had.
Oh man, I feel that way about Sorry, go ahead.
They played it song number 1 through 11. Like they just played all the 11 songs with only a disco ball on stage.
It's just I feel like that about some bands. Like I feel like I've been really lucky to be in the wheelhouse for some bands where it was like that. But obviously Korn is definitely not one of those. And yeah, it's like that's a thing where like I'd love to go see them, but I also know they'll play like 10 songs I don't even recognize.
They don't play anything old pretty much. I mean, they played like a few older songs. But I think the thing is we like are in a time now where tours are nostalgia things now.
Oh yeah.
The biggest drawing tours are these nostalgia things where they maybe play a whole album.
Yeah.
Or they promise they're going to play old shit, and I think that we're going to get. I mean, they can't do Follow the Leader front to back, and they're definitely not going to do Life is Peachy. But I think they'll do some kind of mix of that kind of stuff. I mean, fuck. They should just all go on. Korn and Limp Bizkit should just go on tour and do the fucking Woodstock '99 set. That would be fucking incredible. But you know, I can't get them to do it. I've been trying. But I want to, before we go tonight, because I know you do have another show to do.
Yeah.
But before we go, I really do want to recommend that you give it a shot. Roots by Sepultura, because that album is fucking great.
I will. And I've listened. I've definitely heard some of it for sure.
It fits in with that other stuff, and it like it's good. It's like. It reminds me, it's like the early Korn. Like I would put that if somebody was like, "What are your favorite nu metal albums?" That even though Sepultura is not a nu metal band, that album would be so high on my list because like every song's great and it has all the guys on it and they do a lot of crazy shit. I like highly recommend that album.
Okay, I'll do it, and I will say the weird, like probably the only other nu metal band where I liked an entire album of theirs was Seven Dust.
Oh, God, I hated those guys, but that's a whole different thing. I saw them live a bunch of times, and weirdly enough, I saw them live a bunch of times, and the only thing I remember is that the lead singer was picking at his balls the whole time, and it made me uncomfortable because I was standing in front of him, and I was a young 16-year-old hillbilly and didn't quite understand it, so I might have to give them another shot.
Yeah, that first album, I think it's called Home. That's like, there's some dynamite tracks on there. But that's honestly, like, other than that, I remember having like compilations of like nu metal songs and stuff, but there was never like full albums that I got like really into. Actually, you know, the only other one I probably fully got into was Kitty's first album.
Oh God, Brett had never heard them.
And they would be such a weird band to listen to now if you had never heard them.
Before we did the original nu metal show, which I still got to send to you, he fucking listened to that album and got obsessed with it and was only listening to it for like months. And this was in 2017.
That's amazing.
Yeah, he loved it, man.
I mean, there's some amazing songs on there. Like, it's just crazy. I love it. I mean, Brackish is still like such a good song. Like the rhythm section in that, the driving, and they were really good players too. Like if you watch like live videos of them, like they were fucking good. Like,
yeah.
And because they played Ozfest back when it was like still cool to like hate women for playing instruments or like being in public.
Yeah.
And so like they were getting booed and stuff, and then they'd just come on stage and like rip people's faces off. And they're like, I love that. So yeah, that was another one because they were Canadian too. So that was like, you know, we had a little bit of love for them for that.
I think I did the first 6 Ozfest too. Maybe 8.
Amazing.
So, yeah, I got to see Pantera a bunch, which was a big deal.
Yeah, that's cool. I definitely never saw them.
They were a huge band to me. I know the Confederate flags and stuff, but again, I'm a hillbilly from Groveport, Ohio, so I didn't know that was wrong.
Well, yeah, I mean, and back then, I mean, who knew what was wrong?
Yeah. Well, John, thank you so much for doing this. And
man, thanks for having me.
spending extra time with me.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. Anytime.
He's your comic, Cullen the comic. What?
Cullen the comic on Twitter, yeah, and Blocked Party is at Blocked Party Pod.
And he is a very good part of Block Party. I love him, and I love their show. Go listen to it. Bye.